Okay, so hello everyone. First of all, a warm welcome to our webinar on People Analytics at the Center of Business. I'm Samit. I'm the Chief of People Success here at Navikenz. Navikenz is a consulting-led data, AI, and a digital engineering company. In the past, I have held HR leadership roles at Bharti Airtel, Birlasoft, and Infosys. I've always been fascinated by people data and the insights it brings in. Today, we are fortunate that I've been joined by three industry leaders who have all equal passion in the area of people analytics and have done extensive work in this. First, let me introduce Ramesh. Ramesh Soundararajan. He's a partner at Carlston Consulting LLP. He is really experienced in this field, 30 years of experience in HR. He's held senior HR, including CHRO roles at Infosys, Sasken, and CA Technologies. He has consulted internationally and with Indian clients on HR and analytics. He currently actually is a program architect for XLRI Delhi and a master facilitator for SHRM, which, as you know, is the premium HR body across the world. And he's also written a book, probably one of the top books in HR analytics, Winning on HR Analytics. He co-authored it with somebody else, and he also consults with a lot of other companies, including edtech companies. And my biggest introduction for Ramesh is he was my first boss in Infi, and really it was he who introduced me to the world of HR analytics. So welcome, Ramesh.
Hey, thanks for the introduction. And my co-author is Dr. Kuldeep Singh. I just wanted to add, so yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, let me introduce our second panelist, Renil Kumar, who is currently the CHRO at a digital transformation company called Photon. He spent actually 18 years with Wipro, heading multiple HR leadership roles, like heading HR for APAC, EMEA. He also headed the HR business for healthcare. And then I think towards the end, he led the organizational development function for Wipro. He's really somebody who thinks HR as a conference of people, business, and technology. And he's done tremendous amount of work personally in the field of people analytics, specifically around democratization of data, grassroots adoption, and things like networks. And I think we'll hear more about that, Renil, from you. He's developed some tremendous use cases around that, even partnering with Microsoft in the past. So welcome, Renil.
Thank you, Samit.
And both Ramesh and Renil join us from Bangalore. And then I have pleasure of welcoming Gagan Bhargava. He's joining us from Singapore. He's the global head and VP for People Insights and Data Excellence at Schneider Electric. Again, Gagan and I go a long time. He's again a very senior leader, having spent 25 years in the field of HR across diverse industries. He started again as a colleague in Infosys long back in '99 and spent many years there across sub-functions of Comp and Ben. He led quite a few of them. And then later on, his last role was to head HR for the EMEA region of Infosys and was based out of London for that. Later on, he switched to NDTV, moved to Delhi. He's a Delhi guy, and he became the CHRO there at NDTV and was there till about 2015. Post that, he joined Schneider, again in multiple global HR roles, and currently, as I told you, leads the HR data, analytics, insights, cybersecurity office, workforce planning. Very, very interesting subject from the people analytics perspective. He's currently, initially was in Hong Kong, currently based out of Singapore. I'm sure with this kind of panel, we'll have some great insights coming in today. So before I think I get it started, I thought I'll just say a few words as to why we chose these people analytics as a topic. It's really a subject all of us love. That is really something we keep chatting up on the side. And all of us are doing some work, either because of the nature of the business we are in, or because of the work or profession we are doing on this topic. Also, the function has evolved a great deal and it's become extremely powerful. It has really shifted when I joined from some basic reports and HR analytics to to real stories behind the data. I think that's important. And the way the people analytics today looks is very different from what I think we all started off our careers in. It was just HR data, HR analytics. Now people analytics brings in data from various other sources of business, financial data, CRM data, production data, so on and so forth. So that makes the data and the insights which it throws up extremely powerful. Plus, a lot of advancement on the technology front. All of us know that. Visualization, big area. It is bringing a lot of HR data, people data to life, and the potential role of AI. We are not getting into too much of AI on this webinar. I know we believe it should be saved for another day, but there's a tremendous amount of work that's possible. I already started on the field of AI, on the people data, but the basics have to be right first. And so really, people analytics is what we discussed today, and we believe it's going to drive a lot of change and impact in business. And it's empowering a lot of you. I mean, some of you are CHROs. I know that it's really becoming a tool for our CHROs to add tremendous value in shaping businesses of future. So with that, I think I would like to open it up to our panelists, maybe a few minutes each. Just hearing from you, maybe Ramesh, Renil, and Gagan in that order. Why people analytics? Why should people analytics matter today? Maybe Ramesh, you could kick it off.
I think, hey, thanks, Samit. I think this is something which works both ways, right? I think if you see, this is a story which has been, I think, which is there in the public domain for some time. So if you go back in time and say, look 30 years back, and if you look at what were the most valuable companies worldwide, so you would look at companies like GE or, Shell or ExxonMobil. These are, hardcore companies which relied on fixed assets, right? If you're looking at tangible versus intangible assets, there was a time your reliance was more on tangible assets, and then how do you leverage these assets drives how successful you are. But if you go and look at today, so your most valuable companies could be Apple or Microsoft or Alphabet or Tesla, I think, here and there. The question is, these are not companies which are relying too much upon their existing physical assets. I mean, Google has data centers. How big is that as an asset? Not really, right? It depreciates. So then the asset today, it's possible for you to build highly valuable businesses on the basis of human capital. On the basis of human capital, it works two ways. Human capital, you could be like a TCS where you have a large volume of people who deliver, or you could look at the product model where you look at a shorter number of people who are also delivering a lot of value. So today, the real asset, I mean, I won't say the real asset, you still need physical assets, but the point is there is a lot more difference that can be brought about by leveraging human capital by both knowledge-based companies or companies like Schneider, from where Gagan is there, right? So all of us now need to leverage the human capital better, which is where analytics comes in. You can't, keep you looking at our old approaches and saying this is what so-and-so said you should have with due respect, right? You should have a good friend at work, or so-and-so said something else. So today, I think you should be able to create unique, custom, homegrown insights, and that is where analytics becomes very useful. Without which, I think you will still be talking in generalities and not creating a difference. Back to you.
Renil? Absolutely, Ramesh, because we've all faced it, I'm sure, as HR leaders. We'll go with some point of view, and the business may come back and say, but I know your people, I don't think what you're saying is making sense. But if you have got all the right data and insights to prove it otherwise, it's much more powerful. So I absolutely agree. So maybe moving on, Renil, what are your thoughts on that subject?
Let me answer the question a little different way. I think the time is right now because of a couple of reasons, right? One, the businesses are getting more complicated, and it has becoming, ever since globalization happened, we got a lot more complicated. But now with technology coming on board, it's getting a lot more complicated, and people are not able to take decisions unless it's backed by data. Secondly, I think there's a lot of data available and data that is not being created. When I say not being created, something like passive data. I don't know how many of you know passive data. Passive data is something that's getting created as we go about our day-to-day jobs, which is not being kind of harnessed, and that's very powerful, right? And third is, I'm a big fan of disjoint data. When I say disjoint data, I mean data from HR, finance, sales, whichever functions. But how do you make sense for yourself in finance? How do you make sense for yourself in HR? You can't do it because you can't become a finance person. But what you can do is make sense of the data and make the best of it for yourself. So these three things are kind of really making us, one, is creating the right condition, but also pushing us to do the right, dwell a lot more data. But if I kind of zoom in and ask why in HR, 3-4 areas that I personally feel is very, very powerful, and I'm sure most of you would agree. The first one is we're able to take evidence-led evidence-led decisions, which have not been in the past. As a person myself, I've been more a mathematician. I keep saying this to all the people I meet, but in HR, it's a lot more esoteric. You're not able to pinpoint and say, this is why I'm taking a decision. And with now data coming on board, you are able to take a lot of decisions based on a certain set of data, which is one, convincing, two, less for argument, less for interpretation, and three, logical, right? So that's something that I personally have been practicing for more than a couple of years, but I think it's a habit right now. Second thing is, which I use data extensively in HR, is being, how do you hyper-personalize employee needs? How do you hyper-personalize candidate who joins us, who's applying to us? How do you hyper-personalize employees who are working with us? Their needs are very different. Each one has got a different need. If you just hear them and forget about it, then the story is lost. Finally, how do you hyper-personalize our alumni who's also left us? And everybody who has been associated with this company has to have a feeling that they're really valued and they need to come back. And the only way you can do that is make them feel really good about it. And the only way to do that is to kind of go the hyper-personalization route. But beyond that, data has been helping us in many ways around cost, around compliance, around a lot to do with employee satisfaction, because once you do have hyper-personalization, employee satisfaction definitely goes up. Workforce planning. Workforce planning is an area which is, I think, really every day is a new day in workforce planning. I've been working quite a bit on this area, but it's never enough because there's a lot of esoteric stuff there. It's not very organized, but it is getting organized over the last 4-5 years, and it's using a lot of data to do that. And with every company becoming a technology company, including non-IT companies, it's becoming more important to how do you transform the data and how do you use the data, how do you use the workforce adequately. And finally, I think DE&I, diversity inclusion, has always been a post-facto exercise till now. With data, it can be a pre-factor. What do I mean? In DE&I, we say these many women got promoted, these many women got X increase. Everything's in past tense. How can we know what's happening on the ground when things are happening? If somebody is not comfortable in a team, how do I know it? I can't. Data will help you do that. So I think there are more than one reason for us to get into data. I'm sure many of you use it in many ways. I would love to talk about more. Back to you, Sam.
No, thank you. I think you touch upon some great points around hyper-localization and then bring in other functional data to make it powerful. And I'm sure we'll hear more specific cases as we go into the discussion. Gagan, you have any starting comments?
Sure. Thanks very much, Samit. Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. Now, as you can imagine, in a career spanning, I think almost nearly 25 years, I've been in all kinds of HR roles. But the role that I currently hold, I think has endeared me towards it the most. And I say this not just because I'm on this webinar today talking to all of you, but it's more because I think the potential is, we're only starting to realize the potential. And it's pretty much a sunrise function, as my co-panelists were sharing, and we've only scratched the surface of what's possible. And but the fact is that human resources or people data so far has been quite under leveraged to a point that we haven't really found a way to structure the data and utilize it in the way that we perhaps utilize data in marketing, in finance, in supply chain, and so on. So therefore, the potential that we have for using this data is there, but it needs to be harnessed. And that being said, what heartens me, and I just share my screen very quickly to show you a slide that I've been working on. And this is what we see, that there is a rising level of enthusiasm, investment, and confidence in people analytics. So in a survey that was conducted by Insights 222, which is a people analytics consultancy, we see that the respondents are reporting that year on year, there's been an increase in the growth, in the size of their teams, which can only mean one thing, that the confidence in this function is growing, and therefore that's reflected in the investment. And along with that, and why is that? The reason why that's happening is because, as Renil and Ramesh have been saying, we're starting to see people data and the impact on business through people data. And there are many areas in which is now more visible than most, as opposed to a few years back when we had a kind of an obsession with just turnover. But now you see people data impacting other areas such as invisible in employee listening, retention, and so on and so forth. And workforce planning is another area Renil spoke about, and part of my scope at Schneider as well. So I'm very enthused by this opportunity, and also I believe the day is not far, and in fact there are models already being created that will help us to predict financial outcomes using people data, and that would be of enormous value in my opinion. Back to you, Samit.
Thank you, Gagan. I think great insights again, and how the teams are increasing on the people analytics side, and it's becoming so important, and that is really an interesting segue to my next question. That's to you, Ramesh. It's about you are really taking it to the next level. You are creating the skills and the competencies in the larger HR ecosystem to make this people analytics happen the right way. Because if it's just restricted to, in many large companies I've been part of, I saw that this function was restricted to the comp and ben, people who understand it within HR, people who understand this area of numbers, right? Not everybody fully understood that. So, and Renil spoke about it. It's just not doing it in some pocket. How do you take it down to the lower levels where the real decisions get taken? So given that, what do you think, Ramesh, is the current state of people analytics in the organizations that you are serving or you're aware of?
So I think, what do I do? Should I do a slide or should I talk through? So let me talk through this, right? So definitely, if you look at the last 10 years, Samit, I think the base level of skills or awareness has definitely increased across the industry, across HR workforce, because I know I used to, take mostly I do executive education as far as analytics is concerned. One of the universities where we were working with some professionals, people will sign up for doing the certification. But once they get to the analysis part of it, there used to be this mental block saying, how can I do this? So this was rampant to the extent that the university actually got somebody like a troubleshooter who will be floating around in the class. And wherever somebody is stuck, he has to go and help them do that. Today, if you look at the baseline capability, we have definitely come quite forward from there. And even in terms of MBA programs, right? I mean, that is where all this starts. I know, for example, the VTU in Karnataka has, as part of their BBM itself, I think they have a one course on analytics. I mean, how well they teach is different, but the point is, I think that from there, I think it has become integrated. So more people are comfortable coming into the workforce. What I also find is there are variations in terms of backgrounds who come in. There are people who get into HR from a more of a science and a technology background against people who come from a humanities background. Now, humanities background shouldn't really concern people because that is also about hypothesis, formulation, research, and coming out with outcomes. But there seems to be reluctance. So what I find is people who come from more technology or a more of a science and technology background are more comfortable when it comes to working with numbers. What happens in organizations? So what I also see is a lot of progressive leading organizations engage in some form of capability building for their workforce or the other. I mean, many companies actually select people they want it. So if I am doing a HR capability assessment for my organization, I think typically whether it is SHRM or even if you look at our Michigan University model, I think somewhere in it is inbuilt that you have to look at evidence-based decision making and data-based decisions. So capability building happens. Now, what actually becomes more spotty is in terms of what organizations do with analytics. That I think remains. So the one big change which has come about in the last 4 or 5 years is dashboarding. Most companies either use just on the Excel, or I don't know what they do with that finally. But I think across the board, if you are talking about a mature organization, dashboarding has become very common. The second thing that is also, which used to be there, which is there currently, is also looking at data for very specific problem solving. So one of the organizations I worked with, we were building up a predictive attrition model. And, where we found it interesting that when you build a model, it throws you different insights. And usually you would think, you are a core HR person yourself. So what happens after an employee gets promoted? Do you think promotion increases the risk of attrition or reduces the risk of attrition?
Asking interesting questions.
I know, but it's a yes or no answer. So question is interesting.
It depends, actually, Ramesh. I would say that unless your role changes, we are doing something different. In government companies, people did the same job for like 20 years, called themselves AGM, DGM, senior GM.
So the Samit's response is somewhat characteristic of most HR. Not to make this thing. So then what we found, right? This is what we did when you're looking at data. Then we actually found out, at least for the junior levels. I mean, it's not an across the board. You're absolutely right. It's contextual. But at least for the first, second levels, we found that actually your risk of attrition increases after a promotion. So that is when, I realized that often HR, we beat up ourselves for attrition and saying, if things are becoming worse, then why is this happening? But what we don't keep track of is the employees, especially who are growing in the organization in the first 2-3 jobs, have their own version, their own model. And irrespective of whatever, you may be the greatest HR organization in the world, but what employees need is what kind of progress I am making and what kind of companies I want to move into. So when employee mindset is like that, a promotion doesn't help to retain. What actually happens is somebody has finished 2 years. They say, let me work for 1 more year. I'll go to the next role. Then my negotiation capability increases by probably 20%. So let me take the promotion and then quit. So what we actually saw was the year after promotion is the higher risk. Now, the outcome is not to say don't promote, right? But the fact is you are aware of this. So when we started getting into predictive attrition, we realized that what is actually need to be done is not spot solution, but actually a way of modeling your workforce, right? Right from, there are several data points. So how do you model the flow of your workforce from entry to exit? And what do you do with the insights? Now, so there are companies which look at spot solutions like this, Samit, but I think you pull it back, it opens up a lot of systematic questions. So there's another organization where we did some work on, they wanted to know, this was also virtual learning. They had different academies. Then they wanted to find out why some people use the academies, why some people are not, right? Especially if it is virtual learning. So the hypothesis we started off with was that people will depends on, younger people, technology savvy will be using academies, other people may not be using that. So while there was some of that, what we actually found was when you put it all together, you did a cluster analysis, divided people into logical clusters. We actually found there are three kinds of people emerging. One, who will learn come what? Who are really driven by the learning, right? They don't worry whether it is a classroom, virtual, they want to learn. There is a second set of employees we found was that they are open to learning, but they probably would need a nudge or a reminder. Then we found there's a third set of employees who don't care, right? I'm not bothered. This is L&D, something training. I don't worry about this. So we actually found these three type of employees. And so what it meant was you need to have all the three different kind of levers. For the person who really learns, you need to give them good learning opportunities. For the person who needs, who's interested but doesn't automatically do, you need to give them a nudge. Maybe you should create a dashboard or recommendation, reward, recognition, something like that. For the person who's not at all interested, then maybe you have to have a policy, right? So the different kinds of workforce, different kind of solutions. And that is the fascinating part about this. Once you start exploring somewhere, it goes down. But I still think a lot of that, maybe to just step back a little bit, like Gagan said, I think most organizations think analytics means attrition analysis, right? This attrition is one of the biggest banes of people analytics because people keep analyzing, drilling down. It's okay. That's fine. But I think there are other questions you need to ask about talent acquisition, about performance, about recognition, about workforce. So thankfully, I think this hybrid work has opened some of those questions. But I think the organizations that are still not captivated or captured by this attrition, I think are able to achieve more. But how well you leverage it comes back to the kind of leadership you have at the HR. And then I think in my view, I don't have a validated answer. I think it is the individual orientation of the HR leader which drives how well analytics is used.
I will ask that question, Ramesh. Thank you. I had a specific question on that I wanted to hear from you. But I think what you said is, obviously we've come a long way.
No, not that long away here.
Come quite a long way because even the kind of people who are getting into HR is different now. And you're saying even the kind of, the courses that is getting designed in your undergraduate, that is helping because analytics, data, all that is becoming important even in undergraduate, which was not there in liberal arts programs, etc. So I think that's helping the kind of people who are going in. So there is a wide variation of background of people who go into HR for good reason. They should have the right diversity if they have to create that in the organization later. But I think the thought process and the preparedness of HR organizations to harness this power of data is increasing. And there are a lot of use cases you just mentioned.
Samit, if you don't mind, I just want to add one more point. State of analytics in companies. The more progressive ones, I've realized that the only salvation to data analytics is how to use it, which means adoption, right? And that's becoming a bigger problem across board. Everybody has got those wonderful tools, representations, a whole lot of stuff available at the disposal. And one thing I may want to kind of call out here, a little more progressive organizations have started calling out the citizen data scientist. I don't know if you know what is that. Have you heard of citizen data scientist? You know what a data scientist is, right? Citizen data scientist is not a mathematician. He's somebody who's got deep understanding of a domain. He's somebody who is not a qualified statistician. He's somebody who's huge on learning potential. Or she could be somebody who's, more importantly, creating micro solutions for what is required by them using low-code tools. So that's something that I'm seeing in a lot more progressive organizations coming on board. I'm sure it will become, if you want to get this adoption higher in every organization going forward, you'll have to build these scaffoldings. And one of the scaffoldings is a citizen data scientist.
That's a great one. Actually, we'll hear more and learn more from you, Renil, separately, maybe outside. Okay, sure. With that, Gagan, I think it's becoming very clear that people analytics is getting more critical, right in the center, like you're saying, in the center of business today. It is giving tremendous part to the CHROs. Ramesh said that there is a lot of enablement in terms of the kind of people who are getting into HR to help adopt, like Renil mentioned. But you are creating for a very large global company the people analytics strategy and the function. So I wanted to understand, if anybody who would like to start, and I know a lot of HR people would like to start this, go beyond just basic reports that they do for the board or the CEO, etc. Where should they start and how should they go about doing it?
Oh, Samit, this question can be answered in so many different ways. But let me take a shot at it. And of course, I'm sure Renil and Ramesh will jump in as well. So I think first and foremost, the idea is not to get daunted by the prospect of creating a function, because even big companies start small, and it's not that you have a full-fledged function on day one. So, and I think that's where to start, to have a powerful why. Why do you need a people analytics function? And I think my co-panelists highlighted the need for that and also the potential for having such a function. So that's the first thing. The second element is to positioning it right. And what I mean is very simply, it can't be buried deep in somewhere in HR services, somebody, a guy or two, a 3-member team doing metrics and churning out reports. It has to be positioned at the leadership level, perhaps even reporting to the CHRO, so that it gets the visibility and also the investment that it deserves. So that's another point. The third element I have to highlight is around small wins. So by that, what I mean is you don't need fancy tools, a full-fledged data scientist, and so on. As Renil was saying, you have these micro data scientists who are doing phenomenal work in their own micro way, but they're doing it. So by creating a few quick wins or demonstrating the capability, you can whet the appetite of people and have them wanting for more. So that's where I think you could start. That's the other element that I would highlight is building muscle. And by that, what I mean is having the right skill set and also focusing on the use cases that have the potential for maximum impact. You can create a team, but if you don't have the right skill set, you're not going to get very far. And that's a very obvious thing to say, but for people analytics, you need to be quite intentional about the kind of skill you need to have in your team. The other element then is data. So we know for time immemorial, garbage in, garbage out. And it's the most fundamental ingredient that you need to have in your people analytics strategy. And I'm sure we're going to talk a little bit more about data as we go along this webinar, but data needs governance. It needs controls and it needs monitoring. And most importantly, and I'll say this again and again, that data is not the sole accountability of the people analytics function. In fact, it's not people analytics not even accountable for the data quality, because the people analytics function plays at the consumption end of data and not at the source. So we have to be intentional about creating the data architecture and the data infrastructure that the people analytics team needs for it to succeed. Then there's technology. Now, many tools that companies deploy these days, or any HRMS worth its weight, will have some kind of native capability. And in fact, if you use Microsoft Teams or any other Microsoft 365 suite, you'll know about Power BI, Power Automate, and so on. So the advantage of these solutions is that you have a set of prefabricated, standardized tools and dashboards that you can immediately launch. And that would help building the case for people analytics and start to provide HR business partners, managers with data that they so desperately need. Then you have to think about user engagement. How do you get people from doing what they're doing in their Excel sheets and other tools that they may be using to start to adopt and really engage with the kind of insights they've been given? So this means we have to engage the users, create awareness, have a proper change management plan, and of course, worry a lot more about adoption, as Renil was saying, because that's the holy grail. Until you're building a high level of adoption, you're not going to get the advantage from having a well-defined people insights function. Then there is the element of maturity. So how do you know you are making progress? And here, my strong recommendation is to kind of align with a maturity model that are widely available in the market. And these maturity models often come with milestones. So for example, if when you start out, you could think about your milestone 1, which is about proper data management, having a data dictionary, proper governance of data, reporting and integration tools, and so on. Your milestone 2 could be about integration of analytics with performance, with talent, with engagement, and so on. Milestone 3, network analysis or ONA, and of course, analyzing metadata, as again, Renil and Ramesh have pointed out. And finally, your holy grail or your summit could be about insights and actionable insights for managers and data-driven employee experience solutions. So, and I would strongly recommend a series of KPIs that could assess for you the impact that you're having through people data on business outcomes. That would help to kind of build the case for what people analytics is doing and what it is able to do in the future. So those are some of the kind of the building blocks of the initial few steps that I would perhaps launch as I think about establishing a people analytics function, no matter what size of the organization you're in. Samit.
Thank you, Gagan. That was a wonderful roadmap that I think anybody can follow, and then at least design the way to higher levels of people analytics in their organization. It's very clear that any analytics that we do is to drive better performance. It's either individual performance, business function, or a process improvement, or even at an org level, right? So it's therefore very powerful. All these analytics is just not to see some data and feel happy about it. It's about the trends, and then see how we can improve, right, at any level. So Renil, I mean, this is more to you, and Gagan spoke of many things, and you are like a dada in that ONA area. But just before you and we go to ONA, the various use cases, successful use cases that you've seen or you designed. I know that you created a lot of business use cases and experimented them in startups, in your organizations, Wipro, and now at Photon, and even otherwise with Microsoft. You want to share a few which are impactful and probably each one of us should also consider in our organizations.
Yeah, I can take a few of them. Like we spoke about and what Gagan said, ultimately, if you're able to solve a business problem, and when business leaders come and ask you for this more, that day, I think you have arrived as a team in people analytics or any kind of analytics team, right? So I'll just go back and I'll probably step back because I would not assume that everybody knows about ONA. ONA is organizational network analysis. It is nothing but looking at the strength of relationships or lack of it based on a bunch of available data today. And there are two types of data available today. One is active data. Active data is nothing but I go and ask a survey and people say, like I say, employee perception survey, they respond to it and then you analyze that. That's also a kind of data. But what is more interesting, getting a lot more interesting and also kind of controversial is passive data. Passive data is, as we speak, we are creating data. For example, how many minutes if I go to Teams, there are 26 unique fields that I'm creating on Teams. And Teams is ubiquitous across. I'm sure the same with Zoom. I don't use Zoom so much, but I can tell you what it is. In Teams, you can say how many minutes on video, how many minutes on audio, how many minutes in sharing, how many one-on-one calls you had, how many team calls you had. I can go on like this, okay? These are all unique data sets being created as you go your day to day. And I'm not looking at what is happening. I'm not interested in the content, right? The same thing is happening with emails. If I send Samit an email, does it respond to me in 3 minutes, 2 minutes, or doesn't respond, tells me a story, and do this over 300 emails, tells me a relationship between me and Samit. So that's the data we're looking at. And again, I'll repeat, we're not looking at the content. We're looking at the metadata of the relationship. It tells me how many, for example, what I mean by metadata. I mean, how many emails have you exchanged? How often has he responded? Who does he put in as a first person in the email and last person in the email? That also tells you a story. So that's what we look at. And let me just bring 2 use cases, and I probably need to do a quick share out here. Can you see what I'm sharing?
Yeah, go ahead. We can see.
This is one of my use cases, which was really, I think, was very powerful, because every company today is involved in some kind of a large deal, mid-sized companies. And what's a large deal? It's a sale between a village to village. It's not between one person to another person, right? So if I'm able to, and if you also now say that sale is about relationship, which is what it's all about, right? Then, and if you're able to measure the relationship, you're able to look at a sale in a very different way. Typically in our IT sector, a large deal takes anywhere between 6 to 9 months. And like I said, 30 people on the side, 40 people on that side, over a period of 9 months, very difficult to understand what's happening on the ground for whoever it is, right? So on this example, on the left side, you see the company selling, and the right side, you see the company that's being sold into, role holders, right? The 2 key stakeholders selling, Kia and Ria, the people who are actually in connect. The lines represent the relationship. The thicker the line, better the relationship. Thinner the line is much lesser relationship. No line, no relationship. Okay. So first of all, when I ask Kia to sell to an organization, I need to know if she's even capable, because I do not know if she knows all the departments within the organization. She's got all connections. I don't have a view. I now will look at it and say, hey, yes, this person is capable. She's been here for 3 years, but I can see that she's got good relationship with the sales team, with the pre-sales team, which is quintessential. If you don't have that, I can't have or represent the organization. We don't even get down to do this. First step. Second is when I look at different stakeholders within the organization, all this data comes from the CRM. It comes from CRM stroke all the collaboration tools that we use. For example, relationship with Ria and the board member, in this case, Ria and Kia, is strong. It's a thick green line, right? Which is great, which is how it should be, right? But collectively, as an organization, procurement, do we have a good relationship? Who in procurement do you have a relationship? No idea. Economic buyer, who has got large weightage in buying, we have no relationship or lack of relationship. So now what's happening is quantifying at every stage what's the relationship strength. So I can tell you, for example, I can give you make it very simple. I can say in a large deal, if your relationship strength at the end of the 3rd month is less than 38%, there is 90% of chance that you may have to kiss the deal goodbye. I never had this in the past. So now what will I do with the data? I can tell the person, hey, pull back. This is the data. You can choose to ignore it or use it. But if you use it, you'll either pull back the deal and no longer waste time and energy on selling it. Or if you remain, I will tell you where to build a relationship to. And again, I'll measure you in the next 4th month, 5th month, and there are different yardsticks for that. And I can tell you, if you look at this data and when we regress data across, we found that it is almost 90% accurate, because human behavior to certain stimuli is almost similar in many instances. And this is across geographies. The next one I have is deal loss. And everybody in every industry goes through deal loss. And when I say deal loss, I mean large customer suddenly pops out of the window and says, we don't want to work with you. But you never know what happened. If you really want to know, again, you can use data. So here, what you see at the bottom, you have all the different lines of the different functions in the customer organization. The CPO, the coach is a primary coach on the side. Economic buyer, like I said, is important. CIO from the customer side, CFO from the customer side, and cumulative weightage, which is nothing but the average of all the relationships that we have in the organization. The deal was lost sometime in September, but it didn't happen then. It happened much earlier. How do I know? If I look back, I see that, okay, gray line represented by economic buyer, the relationship first dropped here. Immediately, it started dropping across the CIO, it started dropping across the CFO, it started dropping across the coach. Coach was always being considered to you, so it took some more time, but nonetheless, looks like the economic buyer is the main reason why you lost the deal. I can zoom into this sector. I can go back and tell you which interaction did that. You gave a higher price, you removed a certain condition and on legality, whatever happened. And you can go and pinpoint to say, I lost the deal because of this. Now, this is powerful business information for people to sell or not lose a deal again. So those are the two use cases. I'll stop here. I don't know, there's some chats. I'm seeing some chats, Samit.
No, we'll get to that. Maybe I'll ask, we'll have one more question and then open it up. I think we're getting to that time. But thank you. I think this was so interesting, so fascinating, Renil. This organization network analysis. And this is dear to me for two reasons. One is Ramesh and Gagan, you may even remember the guy, Ashish Ray. So this ONA in its basic form existed long back. And this was the question I was asked actually as part of my campus hiring in maybe a little bit, and I could answer it. But what's happening is now it's coming into more of a more into application because of the passive data that all the tools are generating, like you said, Renil. The Teams chats, how long, what, even without getting into the content of it, the email traffic, so much of data is really generated, but that's so wonderful. The second is, I've always been very fortunate to have been part of organizations which believed in data, and they would slice, dice, really analyze data. And, so I think that was very fortunate. However, in most of these companies, the sales data would be very deep, then slice it, dice it, and understand. In the telecom company that I work, oh my God, everything to the last individual, taking some data from a tower will be known. But, and similarly, if it's a product, and I think Gagan, you mentioned about it, right? If it's in a warehouse or something, we'll know parts, how much of it exists, where it exists, when is it getting. People data, nobody does all this. And it's so powerful. Finally, businesses happen because of what people bring in every day. And I think ONA and many other tools are so powerful. I know that I'm mindful of the time, and we touched upon a lot of other cases. Maybe the last one before we throw it open is to you, Ramesh, and maybe Gagan, the technology part of it. How is this getting done, Ramesh? And you said we could start it simply, even with Excel. And then there could be Power BI and other stuff. Renil, you could talk about it. But how can technology help us get insights in a better way? Ramesh, over to you first.
See, Samit, I think I would say this is like going from place A to place B, right? If I'm going to be coming, I can't. So maybe let me take a place close by. If I have to go to Mysore, right? From Bangalore to Mysore, I can walk. It will take me a certain time. I can go by a car. It will take me a shorter time. If I really have money to blow, I can take a helicopter also and then go. These days, of course, you have the freeway, so you can anyway go faster, 1 hour. So I don't need a helicopter, but that's fine. But the fact remains, each of this is an accelerator. I may basically be able to walk, but if I take a bike, maybe I go faster. If I take a car, I go faster. In my view, I think every augmentation of technology makes things easier for you, right? I remember there was a point of time when some of our friends used to compensation planning, using pivot table used to be a major skill, or doing some of these formula used to be a major skill. Today, Excel itself does a lot of those things for you. And 5-6 years back when, not even 3 years back when we were discussing with XLRI in terms of how to do a 9-month certification program on people analytics. The one major debate we had was, should we use R or should we use Python? So then we went in with this view that we should introduce Python, but then the people who were supposed to be reselling it came back to us and said, please don't put any coding in a HR program. We will find it very difficult to sell. So don't have R, don't have Python, do some visualization and Tableau and all, that is enough. But as we went through about one iteration, then, we had people who we had faculty members who said, you don't have to do R or Python. You have to only use, you have to use like no code platforms. We use something called as Big ML, but there are enough no code programs out there which will give you the solution. So I would say this is the same evolution that I spoke about in terms of transport. Technology is getting far better. It is getting more intuitive. It is taking away the fear from you in terms of what will I get. But the fact remains that I need to still want to go to Mysore, right? So what that means is I should first of all be looking to solve some problems, and I should have a belief that data is going to give me that advantage. Once I have these two, then, I'm not saying then automatically I'll get on the highway and then run and all those good things. I may pretty much get lost, like Bangalore traffic, I may get lost in some cross section, intersection, all that is possible. And, analytics is not like you do something and then you get a solution and implement. There's a lot of hard work. There is a lot of dead alleys into which you go into. All that is true. But I think the fundamental belief, once it is there, then technology, you don't worry about technology is what I will say. Amount of computing power, amount of ability to produce insights, it's all phenomenal even today, and it is getting better. So you don't worry about technology. It will always get better, faster, more intuitive. What you need to worry about is only on your quality of your data. Are you focusing enough on the kind of data that you have? And do you want to use it to solve your problems? Then technology will always be an enabler.
Yeah. And maybe just to add to what Ramesh said, I think the problem at hand, or what you're trying to solve, determines the kind of technology that you would deploy. And here, I think in the continuum of people analytics, if you go from information to insights to action, it depends. That would define what kind of technology you have. So for example, if there's only information you're after, then your pre-built, prefabricated dashboards on a standardized platform like Oracle Analytics Cloud or whatever will do just fine. If it's insight you're after, then you have to start from scratch. So for example, let's take an engagement survey. Now, an engagement survey, you get two kinds of data. You get quantitative data, you get qualitative data. Now, quantitative data is very easy to analyze, but when you have over 100,000, 200,000 qualitative comments in front of you, how do you analyze that information? You can't just scan everything on a spreadsheet. So you need the technology that is available today, for example, like topic modeling within NLP, that will help you to mine this information and bring out actionable insights. So that's another different technology that you would need. Now, if it's actions you're after, which is really the prescriptive end of analytics, then you need, again, to build something your own. So again, I give you an example. Pay gap. It's a hot topic these days because as part of diversity, equity, and inclusion, companies are obsessing about reducing the pay gap between men and women, which has existed in time immemorial. Now, the thing is that we know that there is a pay gap, but we don't know what exacerbates the pay gap and what diminishes it. Now, to do that, we need to get ahead of ourselves and inform managers and HR partners and so on before they take decisions that could impact the pay gap positively or negatively. Now, to do that, you need simulation capability so that you can see the impact of your decision before you take that decision. And that requires a completely different kind of technology and capability to build that solution and simulation. So from the continuum of information to action, that and what problem you're seeking to solve will determine the kind of technology you would need to address that challenge.
Very, very interesting. Thanks, Gagan and Ramesh. Renil, I know that you use a lot of technology, specifically Power BI tools, even in your company, to bring this data to life. Do you want to share how people could use Power BI or any of those visualization tools?
Yeah. I'm not present to something because the data is confidential, which I have. But nonetheless, just before I get to the Power BI part, two parts which I think is important from the last discussion, right? I like what I heard earlier from Ramesh. It's important for people who are starting on this to start small. However small doesn't make a difference, but just starting is good enough. And that's one thing which I'm actually encouraging my teams. Personally, I don't find many people actually going down that route. And that's where nobody even starts. And that's a big problem. And I think if people on the call are there, if they can at least try to take a small area and start experimenting in whichever area, it will make sense. Second is leaders need to be hands-on. You can't, you can't have a data analytics team throwing a set of analysis to you because that's his or her interpretation. Leader knows what is required, what's not required for running a business. And if they're not hands-on, they will never get to understand what is the problem on the ground. So towards that, I recently started, been in Photon for a year and a half right now. 6 months back, I was running through a project of how to democratize data across leadership. And the only way to do it easy for us is because we are on Microsoft suite of tools. We have to use Power BI and put it on Teams. So the best thing to do, because everybody will have access is defined. It's easy to reach, and they can access it on mobile and anywhere they want to do it. It's just a pure data visualization tool. But having said that, I personally started looking at 3-4 years when I started off. I started looking at demographics, started looking at obviously attrition, which is like sweet subject, like what Ramesh said for all of us in HR. Third is I was also looking at hyper-personalization data, which we've been collecting from employees. The kind of insights I spent personally, I spent an hour and a half data just looking at this data. I can see different accounts, where is the relationship strong, where is it weak, where is diversity strong, where is it weak, where can I make differences? Every day I spend time on it, I get a different view. And I keep encouraging my leadership to do the same, because if they don't spend their time on data, it won't work. And towards that, Power BI has been fantastic. There are many other tools available, but for us, it's worked well. And I think what we will get to is looking at data and looking at how the data is evolving in a company over a period of time. Basically, the analysis over a period of time will be interesting. And I will be at some stage probably putting in data into Power BI on a regular basis, and we're moving to data lake. We have snowflakes, so we can pull based on. We're not got to that stage as yet, but if we do that, then the trend analysis is much more powerful. So if anybody wants to kind of reach out separately, I'm happy to kind of show them that. But I think it's been a very unraveling experience even for me, even though I've been with analytics for a long time.
No, I think absolutely. Thank you for that. And I know we are on the top of the hour. While we'll open up for 5 to 7 minutes some questions, Vandana, if you're there, you could also, put up the slide, because we are all going to be available, and there are some very interesting work happening on this side on visualization, on analytics. We all love the subject. So in fact, when we were discussing, we said, if there are some use cases that you guys have that you would like to discuss with us or develop, you could reach out to us. Maybe you can put up the slide, Vandana, where to reach out. In the meantime, if anybody has questions, we could definitely take a few questions. Any other questions, you could reach out to the same ID that Vandana, you may want to put up.
Yes, it's coming up.
Great. And I already see that there is a question from Guru. Although Guru, we are not discussing AI and generative AI on this webinar, but I know that that's really topical. You're saying HR is a very document-intensive function. Any generative AI use case you guys might have come across in the last 6 months? I lost that question again. Just a second. Yeah. Yeah, last 6 months as ChatGPT or any other LLM models are becoming talk of the town. It's essentially HR has a lot of documents. How can ChatGPT help? Anybody who wants to take it? Renil, Gagan, Ramesh.
So for me, actually, today, most of my employee communication draft, which I used to go for marketing, is all done by ChatGPT. I don't go to marketing anymore. Simple and straightforward use case in day one, right? Two, even if you want to look at a grammar correction, which is basically in any profession, I use it and it comes out in a different format. I don't know if you've experienced it. You just say check for grammar, and that's when it comes in a completely different format. Three, we've been using it, especially when how we communicate is becoming an issue in most of our the way the HR teams communicate. So I've been trying to trying to kind of smoothen it out, sophisticate the language using different commands. And personally, I've learned a lot. Those are the few use cases right now. Obviously, there is also a danger that some of the data that we're going to feed in there will become public information. At one point in time, being an IT services company that we are, we said, when it launched, we said, should we ban it? They said, no way to do it. It's going to be all over the place. But the problem with us, the real problem with us that's going to happen is all the code that we write is property of the customer. And if there is any plagiarism coming out because of ChatGPT, we have an answer to give. And that's what we're trying to grapple from a business point of view.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think we kind of trying to solve the problem of confidentiality of data by actually partnering and collaborating with OpenAI to launch an enterprise version of ChatGPT, which is designed for and to be used by Schneider Electric employees. So this is kind of an in-house experiment with ChatGPT, which kind of cuts off the need to have public access, and that data and that entire infrastructure then becomes part of Schneider. It hasn't been launched yet, but it's being ready for launch. So we will have more to share about this in the next few months. But just thinking completely aside, I think ChatGPT one day could spell the doom for dashboards. We will not perhaps have the need for any dashboarding if you have a powerful prompt-based front end and with a solid data architecture in the background, and you'd have the answers you need on the fly. And I think that is where maybe the future will be.
Another interesting point, Gagan. I just had a follow-up to you. This enterprise ChatGPT solution that you have put together, is it having all your internal data, or has it also taken in whatever is there in public?
No, it will. Yeah. So this is meant to be used internally. So it's really a ChatGPT for Schneider Electric. So it doesn't have any public data. So it's meant to secure and ring fence what we have within the company, and yet give the opportunity for employees to use that capability, which otherwise they would do in the public domain. And the challenges, as Renil was pointing out, you then have all the company sensitive confidential data perhaps residing on OpenAI servers, which is not such a great thing.
Got it. So I think we'll, people have to jump onto other calls, maybe one or two more questions. Imtiaz is saying, any quick successful people analytics initiatives that has led to great positive outcome for the business and all? Renil, Gagan, I know you mentioned a few. You was talking, Renil, about this ONA initiative to drive sales and close, and maybe those are interesting. But any other use cases? I have a few. Like in my last company, Airtel, and I can be open. We had some big challenges on engagement, and specifically in pockets like the digital organization. We didn't seem to have much data. We had some annual data on engagement. So we brought in an AI-driven tool to look at more milestone-driven feedback from people. And then, based on, what were we hearing and the artificial intelligence which ran behind, we were able to trigger to the HR business partner. And again, to your question, Renil, democratization of the data right there, just in time for them to act. And then just based on that acting, many other people who could be at risk. So I think that was very successful, and it continues to serve Airtel well. So that is a quick one. And maybe the last one that I wanted to pick up, Balaji, your question. Workplace practices have changed significantly since the pandemic, with hybrid work practices turning into a new normal. How has HR utilized quantitative data and analytics to be better prepared to serve people with appropriate HR practices? This is more to the HR leaders running big companies. How are you managing through analytics this new hybrid workplace and its requirements?
instead of, because we're over time and this might take a while, I would highly recommend searching for a white paper by Microsoft, a research that Microsoft had done on hybrid and what kind of analysis that they have done and discovered and uncovered, rather, based on some of the analytical work that they have done. So please Google for it, and you should have this kind of this white paper from Microsoft. I think it's publicly available, and that has a wealth of information on what's possible, what has been done, and some surprising outcomes as well. So I'd highly recommend it.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I know that we are about 10 minutes over time, but it was a very engaging discussion. I really learned personally from all your insights, Gagan, Ramesh, and Renil. I think we'll continue to chat on the side. And, guys, if you have more questions, please let Seema know. Her email ID is here. And if there are some use cases that you want to be coached on, Renil, Gagan, Ramesh, and myself, we are all volunteering to get into some discussions with you and try and help you as you develop those cases and implement it in your organizations. Thank you again for your time, and it was a pleasure having this webinar.